Today, we are doing a bite-sized episode on the art of spending. There's a famous book called The Art of Spending, written by Morgan Housel, and the book is about personal spending. And today we're going to talk about that from the business standpoint. Shout out to one of my awesome friends and clients who really sparked this idea because we've been working through a lot of this stuff for him and his business, and he said this might be a really good idea for a podcast. But I want to do a bite-sized episode. We talk a lot about making more money, or reaching financial goals, more sales, more clients, and we don't talk a ton about spending. And it's one of the levers, so we definitely want to be intentional about it. There are two opposite issues with spending. One is the person that is so tight that they miss out on opportunities and growth, and they just miss out on one of the purposes of money and one of the benefits. And then on the other end, there are people who spend too much. That's probably more of a problem for most people. They're spending things and they're kind of not following some of the things that I'm going to share, and that can be problematic as well. So you want to be right in the middle, and it's not always easy because we know from the art of spending that if there's one thing you walk away here, it's that money and spending is emotional. No matter how pragmatic we think we are, we make decisions emotionally, and then we justify them logically. It's the same thing for our prospects and our clients who buy from us. They do that because of their emotions first, and then they justify it with logic. It's really important to remember that because it'll change how we speak to people, how we understand them, and in this case, it's how we understand ourselves. So I'm going to share 3 points as we keep this one. This one's going to be, my goal is right at about 10 minutes. So the first one is thinking. These are like kind of questions you could ask yourself or things you could think through. Is this an expense or an investment? And that sounds really obvious, but I want to give you a little bit of a framework for that. There was a Harvard study that showed there were 2 areas in spending that the most successful businesses did not compromise on when things got tough. The big example I think of is COVID. And again, you have to take these with a grain of salt because there's so many factors that might be happening in a business. I know for us during COVID, it's so long ago now, man, it's been, over 6 years, but it's still such a good example because it was a time where we really had to make decisions. We had to make them quickly. I remember being really disciplined with spending during that time. And I think we did really well in that case, but there are 2 areas in general that you want to be careful with. With that said, both of these can also teeter too far, either way. But one is people. You need people to get the work done. So if you try to save money by not hiring when you should or when you need to grow, or not paying as much as you need to, and then losing good people, that can be just as problematic. But typically speaking, with good people in the right seats of the bus, we want to be careful not to underspend there. And then the other side is marketing. We have to get clients, and if we're tracking our marketing dollars, we'll have an idea of what's working and what isn't. So we want to be intentional there. And those are 2 of the higher amounts in terms of most people's expenses. Again, both can swing too far one way or the other. This is a story I share in some of my talks where I was working with a gym owner and things were really tight. She had a lot of debt. She was using credit cards for basic operating expenses just so that she would make payroll, hoping that the next month would save her, and that wasn't happening. And that's when we got in touch, and looking at her P&L, her payroll was over 55% of her total revenue. And there's a spectrum and there are ranges, but she was in a high expense area as well. So it's there's only a certain amount of room. There's only a certain amount of margin there within the pie. So we want to make sure that we're being careful on that side. Some of the other points I'll think about when it's an expense or an investment is obviously, can it make you more money? So if you're investing in something like marketing is a good example. Like if I'm putting $100 in and getting $200 out, it's a pretty straightforward answer. So will this investment ultimately make us more money? I do think of coaching, and that's a whole nother thing. That might be a whole nother episode. A lot of people struggle with the different coaching options and if they should do it and how they should do it. And if you're interested in hearing my take on that, definitely let me know. But that could be an example of this. I mean, I've had examples where coaching, man, has made such a dramatic difference. I could point to something that was talked about during a coaching session that just really completely changed my life. So it's hard to put a price on that, right? But then there's other times where I've invested in coaching and like, didn't really get as much out of that as I would have hoped. So that's one of those areas that you could think through. And then there's the client experience, which we know is really important for long-term financial health. So is this investment gonna improve the client experience to a point that makes sense? You want to kind of stay in your lane and make sure that the thing you're doing is affordable, but is this software or equipment in the gym? I have great clients I'm working with that just kind of redid their gym, and they invested a lot of money in all the different racks, and they're trying to improve the flow. I have a couple of people I'm working through with that, and it's in those cases, I think it's a really good investment. It's going to lead to higher paying clients that most likely will be happier, stay longer. But that's also a potential trap, because some people think that's the thing, but their money would be better spent in other ways. I'll give you an example for myself. I recently spent a good chunk of change on hiring somebody to help me set up some automations, and I really did it to buy back my time, because I think two things. It's going to help the client experience, but also it's going to free me up to do what I do best and where I can be the most valuable. So is it an expense or an investment? First thing you could ask yourself. The second is it aligned with the vision and values of the business? Really spending some time thinking about where are you going, and is this spending a decision aligned with that? Sometimes we make decisions just because we think that's the thing to do, or we see other people doing it, but we want to get clear on our vision. It's hard to know because we can't see the future, but really spend some time thinking about where you want to go and what kind of gym do you want. If you want a gym that looks a certain way, then that might require a certain investment, or if it involves certain people, that might involve an investment. Thinking about where you're going, and then your values, of course, the values you have for yourself and for your business. If one of your values is like super high end, then that's going to change the spending that you do. Maybe that's not a huge value of yours. Doesn't mean you want a gym that doesn't look good, but you just want to think through, like, what is it that you want to be known for? What are the things that really stand out for you? When you think about equipment and software, so a lot of people are just quick to invest in equipment and software. Those things they're kind of like the easy thing to do, but they don't always have the return that we're looking for. Whereas the thing that might be a little bit more uncomfortable, like maybe getting some sales training or some financial coaching, or something that's maybe a little more comfortable, but will really make a difference long term in terms of profitability and financial position. With that said, speaking of software, that's one thing you could look at. You can look at a lot of these subscriptions. They just have a tendency to just build up over time, and we want to look at those and say, is this producing a return? Is this helping save time? Is this producing a better experience? Or is it just something that's there and I could do with or without it? And I also want to make the point that you're allowed to just spend money because you just like something, that's fine. Like not everything has to make like perfect financial sense. I think that's a trap because you know there are things that you just enjoy and they might not make the perfect sense. Maybe you're getting something out of it. With that said, a lot of times we're not, and these are just things that just end up on the P&L, and we think because they're just $100, $200, $300 that they don't make a big difference. But if you look at the long-term effect of that and the compounding, with that said, our friends over at Nomly, they are able to combine multiple things into the same platform. So if you're doing your billing and you're doing your scheduling and you're able to save money by a limit, I've done that many times over the years where there's I don't want to get too all over the place, but I have like another story related to software that I'm going to share with this, but that's a good way to save money. And so I know with Nomly, they're able to take a good amount off of the billing fees that most gyms are paying. They have examples of that, and so a lot of our people are doing that. So I will provide a link where you could kind of run your numbers to see if that will increase your profitability, and then from there you could see if that's something that might make sense for your business. With that said, I mentioned that there are two spectrums. You could either be the person who overspends or the person that underspends. One of the challenges in my case is I had such a dramatic financial turnaround that it's kind of still in me to be like very cautious of overspending and very disciplined in some areas. Some areas I have no problem spending a ton of money, but in some areas I'm like, man, I don't want to waste $1 in this thing that maybe isn't like my highest value. And one of those is I have two recent examples. One is the software that I use for the podcast. I got a message from them and it said, hey, by the way, we're now doing this other thing. So basically you can get rid of the other app that you're using. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'm going to save $20 a month. And I was beating myself up because month after month after month kept passing. And I'm like, man, I'm paying $20 every month and I don't even need to. But then I kind of just totally switched my mindset. And I'm like, you know what? That $20 might be a good use of that $20 because now I don't have to be totally reliant on one platform. Like what happens if I decide to stop using this current platform? You never know what happens a year from now, 2 years from now. And it's going to take a lot of work to switch the other one over. And that's worth something, either my time or somebody else's. It was just a reminder to me that not everything is about like looking at each dollar and ignoring some of the other facts. There was another situation like that as well where I had a fee that I had to pay and I was just like so bent up about it, and I'm like it's not really worth worrying about this. It wasn't that much, and it was just something that I had to do for long story, but it had to do with New York and my previous business and just a bunch of nonsense, but it wasn't worth the stress for $60 or whatever it was that they wanted. And so, yeah, we're just talking about thinking long-term is that last point. The first one was, is this an expense or an investment? The second one is it aligned with the vision and the values of the business? And then finally, just make sure you're thinking long-term. Back to that, making decisions emotionally. It's very easy to make a decision that will negatively affect us long-term because we got so caught up in the moment of the emotions. So one of the ways that you could protect against that, I mean, one is having a coach or some wise counsel that can help guide you and actually using it. Number two is taking longer time with bigger decisions. I have a decision in front of me where I'm going to spend a lot of money, like $25,000, and I'm like, I'm not just going to make the decision like without thinking. It's a lot of money, so I'm going to do it. But I put a lot of thought into it. Just wanted to kind of weigh out the pros and cons, which is another thing. Like, what are the potential pros? What are the potential cons? Am I willing to deal with all of that? It's another good exercise. And then asking yourself, what will the future self of me think of this? So the Billy 1 year from now, will he be happy with that decision he made to spend $25K? And what we do with clients is forecasting, because it's really helpful to see the data, to see it on paper. So I'm talking about emotions, but one of the ways that you can keep that in check is by just looking at the reality of what happens here in these different scenarios. This is the cash coming in. This is the cash coming out. This is what happens if we spend that cash. This is what happens if we don't spend that cash. Just remember that there is a lot to the profit and the cash flow. It's not just to build your savings, and it's not just to pay you more and more. There's lots of purpose for that. There's thinking about tax ramifications, and there's thinking about business growth, and there's thinking potentially about debt payoff, and there is thinking about you building wealth outside the business. So there's a lot of different pieces to this, and a lot of different jobs of profit and cash flow and the different levers. So you want to think through all of those. But that is what I want to share with you today. Let me know if you found this helpful. I'll just do a quick little recap here. Be careful not to overspend and put yourself out of business. Like 25% of those after COVID that went out of business for lack of cash flow. And also be careful not to never invest in the right things for you and your business. Either of those can be problematic. If you ask yourself, is this an expense or an investment? Is it aligned with the vision and values of the business? And am I thinking long-term with this decision? Again, I'll put that anomaly calculator in the show notes. You can look through that to see if that's a way for you to save a little bit of money. If you do, let me know. I would love to hear the success story. And thanks so much for listening. I said 10 minutes, and yeah, we're quite a bit over that, but hey, did my best, and I'm not going to beat myself up over it. It's not, if you're still with us, then it was worth it. Let me know what your thoughts are. If you need any help with any of this stuff, looking through this, forecasting, if you want tools, resources, let me know. I'm here to help. Use the help. That's why I'm here. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, you're listening to the Your Fitness Money Coach podcast.